is not only, a symbol of hope for us as a community, as Filipinos, but she's also, an epitome of Filipino identity.
I am very excited today to be speaking with Kent Donguines, the director of Treasure of the Rice Terraces. Uh, Kent, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kent, Treasure of the Rice Terraces is a beautiful film.
Right.
It really is. Where did it come from? Why did you want to begin this journey?
Yeah, originally, this was way back in I think 2016, 2017 when I started developing a project about tattoos, especially revival of indigenous tattoo cultures. Originally it was going to be a comparative doc called The Last of It, which would have been, which would have featured uh tattoo cultures across Canada, Philippines, and New Zealand. And in 2019, I was given the opportunity to produce, to produce a short documentary about the revival of Indigenous tattoo cultures here in Canada called This Ink Runs Deep, which was the Canadian component of that original doc. Um, and after making that movie, and taking it to film festivals and seeing my co-producer and my director getting tattoos from indigenous Canadian tattoo artists, I was kind of like, I wish I had that moment. I wish I had, that same experience because at that time, being new to Canada and also just kind of getting used to this new environment and my new identity as a permanent resident. I wasn't really sure if, if if it was even appropriate for me to get tattoos from Indigenous Canadian tattoo artists. Which then, brought me back to really reviewing what I've had originally and where my passion's at after making that film. And it led me to the development of Treasure of the Rice Terraces. That was the first iteration of it in 2019 as a solo project outside of the original comparative doc.
Mhm.
Um, and it dawned to me, hmm, the more the more I did my research for Treasure, the more I realized that this was something that wasn't so new, especially having Apo Wang-od involved in the film because
Yeah.
and I was in film school in 2016. I had, like, as mentioned in the film, I had a reoccurring dream of an old lady in the mountains in the Philippines. And I didn't even know who this old lady was, or where specifically in the Philippines. I just knew that landscape was so familiar because one of the seven wonders of the world during that time was the Banawe rice terraces that is found in the Philippines. So that's how I kind of made the connection. And when given the chance to further develop the project and really shape it where I wanted to be, where it's pitch ready and I can do further development with it. Um, I that's when I thought that there's so much more to this film other than profiling this community and this amazing tattoo artist. That the film itself, should document my journey into reclaiming my Filipino identity through this particular practice, because, you know, as an immigrant, I realized that the further I was in the Philippines, the less of a Filipino I became
Mm.
because I've accepted the fact that I'm already far from the Philippines. I you know and also I it's an opportunity for me to reintroduce myself in this new world that I'm in. And there's a lot of like push and pulls of where my identity's at, whether embracing it is the way to become Canadian or letting go of it fully and embracing this new identity to be Canadian. And then I think Treasure of the Rice Terraces just became that avenue for me to express that journey and also share and celebrate how awesome it is to be a Filipino and how rich our culture is today.
You know, it is a beautiful film. Like this is a genuine, I want to come back to the idea of identity. This is a beautiful conversation about exploring and claiming identity and whatnot. But I wanted to ask you too, because the film does begin with some conversations about the stigma attached to tattoo culture, including in the Philippines. And I was wondering, in your perspective, like as the film goes on, of course, we see people celebrating this art, this visual art form. But is the stigma still there, or has it died down in over the years?
I would say the stigma is still there, because traditionally Philippines as a country is just a really conservative country. And as expressed in the film, I've seen this within my own household. Now, people who were getting tattoos within my family, would either receive comments from my grandma and say, no, take that out. That looks bad. You're not going to get a job, or you won't be able to pursue the rest of your dreams if you don't remove that from your body. Also, it also comes down to, Philippines being a religious country,
Mm,
especially Catholic. Because sometimes there are, and I guess most of the time, I would say that there is some kind of approach to religion that not a lot of people can really agree on. Like they could have the same denomination or belief, but not everybody interprets the
yeah.
Bible the way it should be interpreted. So in the Bible, in Leviticus, in the book of Leviticus, it says that thou shalt not scar or mark your body, because it is a temple that God created. And I think a lot of Filipinos, especially the church, really uh kind of listened to that verse, and became just anti tattoos because of that. So I
Well,
would say,
sorry, go.
and just to kind of wrap it up, um, I think um there's still stigma, but I believe that the older generation has now opened their minds to what tattoos actually play in today's world. Because I'm experiencing this in my own family. I went home to the Philippines 6 years after I moved to Canada, and my grandma saw all of these tattoos. And yeah, at first she was like, "Oh, how come you got all these tattoos? You need to take it out." And then I kind of spent more time in explaining that, like this is actually more of a documentation in my way of telling who I am. The more I add things to my body, it's more than just a design or for aesthetic. Like it's deeper than that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and people can look at a verse and lose sight of it, like or lose sight of the real meaning behind it. And this, I think that what we see here in this film is the beauty, the beauty of the tattoo art and tattoo community. Community. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but you know what I'm talking about. Um, and that brings us to forgive me. I think it's Apo Wangod,
You
and
got it. You got
that
it.
she's amazing. What is the magic of her and the impact that she has had on you and on the community?
First of all, I think it's beautiful. I think it's such a beautiful moment, to share. The very first time I saw Apo Wang in person, um, we were basically just saying hi to her because she was having a busy day, and just expressing preliminary interest of chatting with her at a later time while we were in the village. And I thought I had so many things to say, only to find myself speechless in front of this legendary icon. And I was kind of pondering why I was speechless. It wasn't necessarily because I was fanboying, but I thought there was something so poignant and just so poetic with me as an artist meeting another artist,
Yeah.
like Apo Wang Od. Um, and at first, of course, I feel a little bit awkward because how am I gonna, react to her presence? And and then realizing later that she actually has so much personality. She jokes, she makes more jokes than any of us. She would joke about us being single, and if we're looking for someone, like she has so many grand nieces in the village that she can introduce us to, and just and it really reminded us too on how important it is to take life a little bit easier. Um if there's one thing I learned from her, it was one, not really stressing too much.
mm,
And this was not from her alone, but also the other elders in the village. People think she's uh awesome because she's 108, but no, there's more elders in the village that are way older than Apo Wang, and you talk to them about their secret, and the most common thing that they would share is that us city people are just more stressed than that.
mm,
Also and also, for the community, Apo Wangod has become a beacon of hope. We're talking about a traditional tattoo practice that was bound to be erased in
mm,
this world, and Apo Wangod chose to pass this on to someone in her family, and then from that one child, Grace Palikas, learning the tattoo practice at the age of 9, it gets passed on to then El Young, and then 20 more young women, and then now over 100. And so Apo Wangod is not only a symbol of hope for us as a community, as Filipinos, but she's also an epitome of Filipino identity,
mm.
and really a saving grace, and just knowing that a lot of Filipinos inside and outside of the Philippines now really try to find a stamp of their Filipino identity, and Apo Wangwat has become that stamp.
You know, this, first of all, I mean, she just seems amazing in this. Like, she's a little fireball. I'm impressed.
Yes.
But there's such a beauty to her, and just her warmth, and a deep love for others, and it's just remarkable to see.
Hmm.
And we keep coming back to that word identity,
Yeah.
and I would love to hear your thoughts on identity in this film, but in relation to tattoo culture, because this is not just the story of one woman's impact. It is the story of the depth of the culture that is embedded within the tattoos. It's not just about being on Vogue. I mean, there's certainly with the fame from, no pun intended, from Vogue. But can you talk about that experience? What did you learn about identity and culture by exploring tattoos in this way?
To me, what I really learned about identity all throughout this journey was, number one, I thought the moment I finished the movie, my identity was going to become clear,
Mm,
or that my quest of learning my identity was going to begin after, only to realize that the moment I started developing the movie, my quest for clarifying my own identity has began
mm,
during that time. Um, in relation to tattoos, as growing up in the Philippines and being born and raised in the Philippines, I've seen our country being a Western patronizing country.
mm,
That if someone is a mix of a foreign blood, like they seem to be, receive special treatment, or they're more represented in mainstream media, and just like tattoos, it's tattoos were frowned upon. So
mm,
it's always pushed aside, like it's not talked about. And tattoos in this journey have allowed me to really dig deeper on why people get tattoos, and why this specific tattoo practice has survived you know, years and years, or not just years, but centuries
Yeah.
of colonization. And, and it's rare now in the Philippines to find something that's 100% Filipino. And finding Apo Wangot's story, the story of Buscalan as a village, the passing on of this tattoo practice, like gave us hope that there is still an opportunity for us to connect and really go back into our roots and strengthen our Filipino identity. I think gone are the days that our identity relies on what what people outside of our country would say, and it doesn't rely on the wins and the successes of Filipinos outside of the Philippines. In fact, it allowed us to look even more within the Philippines on how beautiful our culture is, what defines us as Filipinos outside of our talents, the overseas Filipino workers, Apple Wangod. It really allowed us to not only nitpick but embrace our culture to the
Mm.
fullest. You know, the sad part about it is it took a little bit of time to get here. It took a little bit of, Western approval, I would say, for us to be more confident about our culture. But the moment that fire was lit, the quest for a solid Filipino identity has become clearer and clearer. And I'm just happy to see Filipinos loving our own at this point. I also mentioned in the film, like we were born and raised in the Philippines, memorizing this phrase called tangkilikin ang sariling atin, which means love your own.
Mm.
And sometimes we don't do that as a country. But and seeing it and throughout the journey of making this film, I thought, Filipino identity has been solidified year after year that we were working on this film, and even after we made this movie.
I love that, and one of the things too is like this we see in a film like this, like the connection with history, in the artistry of tattoos, the meaning behind them, and bringing those pieces together, as well as owning who you are in the present. I think it's such a beautiful mixture, that comes
Agree.
across.
Yeah.
It's just an incredible story. I wanted to ask this too because it comes up in the film. I know we're starting to run out of time, but the impact of fame on the community. Because after the Vogue, Filipino Vogue article, of course, everything explodes.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if there is a greater tension now within this community because, as we've been talking about identity, and now all of a sudden it's, well, I really want to get this mark. I want to get
Mhm.
Apple Weingod's signature, as a tattoo. I wondered if there's been a tension going on in the community since then.
I think at this point, I think especially after the Vogue cover came out, and and brought the village to even a larger spotlight. Um, there's definitely a massive change that we've seen in the village. The first time we went there, it was, even if it was already improving, and there were more infrastructures. Now there's a rise of more homestays, more restaurants, more souvenir shops. Now it's becoming like a tourist hub of some sort to accommodate more visitors and also allow the locals to make money off of it, to support their livelihood. And but with that said, tourism has its pros and cons.
Right.
Um, coming from an island in the Philippines, I've seen this happen in my own hometown where, like one day it's beautiful paradise, and the next day there's a Starbucks next to it.
Right.
And I think, Buscalan as a community is still pretty remote and slow in progress in terms of these commercialization. But I think, people just really need to come there with a much better intention.
Mm.
Because sometimes. well, most of the time, the locals are not stupid. They want their culture to be respected. They want, visitors to really understand why they're going there and why they're getting certain marks in their bodies. And just really allowing them to, and they're really welcoming and allowing visitors to immerse into their culture. And I think we've seen this community being exploited online, by some video bloggers who would just make a video about them, monetize that video, and not even come back to the community, and share some of the proceeds or royalties that are money that they're making. Um, and yeah, once the intention is clear, then you'll have a much better rapport and relationship that you get to build with this village.
Mm.
And I think that's why that's why it was so magical for us as a team to be in that village. Because when we arrived in the village, we didn't even put up a camera or flew or launched a drone right away. We got to learn their
Mm.
ways. We got to immerse ourselves in their culture. We got to introduce ourselves to the elders. We got introduced to their local government unit. We connected, with the appropriate people to before we could even do anything. On top of that, we received endorsements from the Philippine Consulate General here in Vancouver, the national and regional tourism offices in the Philippines, the National Commission of Indigenous Peoples, um, in the Philippines. And even after we finished the movie, the very first people who have watched the movie is the community.
I love that.
We came back to the village to show to them the finished product. And if they had notes, of course, we were going to address the notes. But the film was so well received. It was so well received by the community. They watched it twice. And and next thing you know, like even the people that we haven't met in the village were coming to us just saying thank you for not only making a movie about Apawang Trace and El Young, but making a movie about the community and making it with the community for the community.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And that's what I'm really hoping for visitors to really ponder on, especially when they're thinking of visiting Los Calan.
I love that. That is so beautiful. And I think that's a great way to put it. This is although Apo Wangod is maybe the star of the film, it really isn't just about her. This is about that community and about
Yeah.
that space. And Ken, it's such a beautiful film, honestly. Thank you so much for the time to chat about it.
Thank you so
It
much.
really is a beautiful piece, and I really appreciate the chance to chat with you about it. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Steve.